Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today I am continuing my Armada breakdown series where we take a look at a ship available in Star Wars Armada and break it down. We're going to talk about the different variants of the Imperial Star Destroyer today. Also going to be looking at the differences between the variants, the different titles, and some build ideas. Maybe it'll give you some ideas if you are a new player, or if you're a veteran, maybe I'll suggest some ideas that you hadn't thought of yet, or maybe hadn't thought of in a while, and it might be a return to some things that maybe you haven't even considered running lately. And that's certainly my hope for this series of videos. If you are new here to the channel, we do have a giveaway going on right now for a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do to enter that giveaway is to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. I also invite you to check out our Discord. We have lots of links down in the description below. You can head over to crabbok.com for some free Armada content and just hang out. There's other links for social media and Patreon if you're interested in that. We actually do have a pretty cool giveaway going on right now in both Discord and Patreon, where I'm giving away some X-Wing promos. So a set of 3 are going to go to somebody in Discord, also to a patron as well. So that's one of the things we do periodically. So I try to spread out the giveaways. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Imperial Star Destroyer. So this is a unique position for a ship in Armada. Well, I'd say unique, but it's semi-unique, because while I would like to say that it's the only ship that has 4 different ship cards, the Super Star Destroyer technically does 2, although only 2 are tournament legal. The other 2 are for more fun play. But so, generally the Imperial Star Destroyer is the only ship that has 4 ship cards. It is, of course, the most iconic ship in all of capital ships in Star Wars, and it is beautiful. It's definitely the ship every Imperial player needs to have. It's also a ship a lot of people who have picked up who don't even play Star Wars Armada, because it's just that iconic, and the model itself is large and magnificent. This comes in 2 different expansions. Initially, we had in Wave 2 of Star Wars Armada, we had the Imperial Star Destroyer expansion, which featured the Imperial I-Class and the Imperial II-Class Star Destroyers. And those were the only Star Destroyers we had for a long time, until we got the Chimera expansion, which gave us another Imperial Star Destroyer with Thrawn's Chimera logo on both the top and the bottom. Normally it would have been only on the bottom, but since we don't really see the bottoms of our ships when we play, they also printed the Chimera on the top, and it's available. And it brought to us 2 new variants: the Kuat and the Cymoon. Now I'm going to get into the specifics of these in just a moment, but they all share a couple of things in common. Now they all have 11 hull. They are all large ships, because they're all still Imperial Star Destroyers. And with Imperial Star Destroyers comes a couple of important things. That dreaded front arc, that nigh invulnerability. This is a difficult ship to kill. It has a lot of hull. It has a lot of shields. It comes with brace, 2 redirects, and a contain. It's a 3-command ship. Now, it's also a 4 engineering ship, although its squadron values will differ a little bit depending on which version you go with. But it's a force to be reckoned with. It's usually run as a flagship. I'm losing my voice. It's usually run as a flagship or a carrier. It's also used as a gunship. It kind of serves most roles. It's also a speed 3 ship, which means it's a fast ship. It's a fast ship. You've never heard of the Imperial Star Destroyer? It's the ship that chased Han Solo when he was trying to do the Kessel Run. Anyway, It's definitely a fast ship, and it's fast and deadly, and different variations of it allow it to be bigger threats at close, medium, or long range. Now, the ship profile definitely features that massive front arc. Also, I'll point out, the model is incredible. It's one of those models that completely overtowers and overshadows the base beneath it. It's one of those ships that if you have it on the table and you're playing at a store, people are going to walk by and be like, what game is this? It's that pretty. A lot of people will buy an Imperial Star Destroyer that don't even play Armada just to have it on their desk, because it's that gorgeous. And they really, Fantasy Flight Games just knocked it out of the park with this design. Now, it does have kind of small side arcs. Usually, this is a ship that is going to want gunnery teams. If in most of its varieties, it's a ship that usually wants to try and get as much value out of that front arc as possible. But sometimes your black dice versions don't want it. We've got two different kind of close range versions and two different medium to long range versions. The medium to long range versions are definitely going to want gunnery teams and some turbo laser shenanigans when they can make do. But let's take a look at some of those ship variants. So I want to start off with our original and also our cheapest Imperial Star Destroyer. And when I say cheapest, that's a little bit of a joke because it's still 110 points for this ship. The Imperial I-Class Star Destroyer. Now, while it does have reasonable maneuverability at speed 3, like all of them, and the same defense tokens and the hull, they all have the same of that. There are some differences. Now, this is a 4-squadron ship, so this one works great in carrier fleets. This does have 2 anti-squadron dice. A black and a blue. It has a little bit of variety there. It has 3 black dice in the front and 2 black dice on the sides, along with 3 red, 2 blue in the front also, and 2 red on the sides. And its rear arc, and rear arc is going to be more important now because we have salvo. That's a thing, although none of the Star Destroyers come natively with salvo. It's going to have a red and 2 blue in the rear. Now, the shields are 4 in the front, 3 on the sides, and 2 in the rear. The shields are strong but not impenetrable, but it makes up for that with its 11 hull. It's one of the highest hull values in the game, and it's definitely difficult to bring down. Now, for upgrades, the Imperial I has some interesting upgrades. It has a turbo laser, it has an ion cannon, but it has no ordnance, which is interesting for an ISD-I that has so many black dice. It's one of those rare cases where a ship really favors a certain color of dice that it doesn't have the ability to support as well with, in this case, with an ordnance slot. It definitely lent itself to being one of the earlier carriers in the game with its weapons team and 2 offensive retrofits. And of course, it has an officer like all ships do. Now, the weapons team and 2 offensive retrofits are going to allow this thing to do a lot of stuff. You can certainly outfit this particular ship to be a big, nasty carrier. And this is, again, it ran this way a lot. You can bring a squadron value up to 5, extend its range out to long range, or do any of the various offensive retrofit shenanigans that you'd like. Or it works well with different boarding teams, which usually want to use a weapons team and an offensive retrofit combined and still have an extra offensive retrofit left over. It does not have a defensive retrofit, though, and that is definitely a crippling vulnerability for a ship that happens to have only 1 brace token. However, the Empire does have an officer called Minister II who can grant a ship a defensive retrofit. So if you want to give up your officer slot to Minister II, you can still get one on here if you need that to happen. Although I think currently the ISD-I is one of the variants that doesn't get taken very much because it's been overshadowed a little bit by some of the newer versions that came with the Chimera. The Imperial II is, by many respects, the ultimate Star Destroyer. It also happens to be the most expensive at 120 points. It is a 344, also like the ISD-I, also makes for a very good carrier, but it's a little bit more well-rounded with both its dice and its upgrades. Now, it does have 2 blue dice for anti-squadron. This gives it pretty long-reaching anti-squadron firepower, although a little bit less consistency than the black dice. Although with 2 blue, you're going to average, you're going to be very likely to get at least 1 damage, if not 2. Now, for our dice pool here, the difference is we've got 4 red and 4 blue in the front, 2 red and 2 blue on the sides, and a red and 2 blue in the rear. So no black dice on this version, but that's okay. It's got the upgrades to support red and blue with the turbo laser and ion cannon. So you've got red dice support and blue dice support for both of those. You have a defensive retrofit built natively into this one, which makes this one an ideal flagship. And also offensive retrofit, weapons team, and officer. So again, very well rounded to help it out with support, boarding teams, flagship duty, offensive duty, anything that you want this thing to do. Usually it has the ability to do that. It's not really a support ship, though. And that's, of course, there are some ways that you can still get a little bit of support out of an Imperial Star Destroyer, but it's really not meant to be a support ship. It's meant to be, an arrowhead, a spear, the tip of your spear, for in kind of the linchpin to your to what you want your list to do. Now, we got 2 more variants with the Chimera expansion. We have the Imperial Star Destroyer Kuat Refit, which was seen by a lot of people as kind of the upgrade to the ISD-I in some ways, especially for those people who wanted it to be the close-range brawler. This is better for that role, while it definitely suffers for its ability to command squadrons, in that it jumps down the squadron value to only 2. So if you wanted an ISD to really push squadrons, that ISD-I is not going to be, it's probably still going to be one of your better options, but the Kuat is much better in terms of being able to be a black dice delivery platform for a couple of reasons. First off, it does have the ordnance slot, which is something that's really, really important for black dice. Whether you're trying to add additional black dice or trying to get the coveted black die crit, you have the ways to trigger all of that stuff with the ordnance slot. It also does have the ion cannon slot, featuring a blue die and at least one blue die in every arc. It makes for a fantastic place to put leading shots, so you can get all of your rerolls in there, not just black die rerolls if you would like. And to help it stay alive as it's trying to get into close range of enemy fleets, it does come native with the defensive retrofit, a huge upgrade. And it also has a offensive retrofit and a weapons team and officer, like most other Star Destroyers do. Now, if we're looking at three red, 2 blue, and 3 black in the front, 2 black, 1 red, and 1 blue on the sides, and 1 of each color in the rear. We've kind of got that rainbow rear arc on this one. 3 command, 2 squadron, 4 engineering, a black and blue for anti-squadrons. But this one, it fits a lot of roles a little bit better, although it definitely suffers at longer ranges. So this one wants to be up close and personal, and it does a little bit better at surviving without having to waste its officer slot on 2-up. And then we get to my personal favorite, the Cymoon. By the way, both of these are 112, right? They meant to come in a little bit more expensive than the ISD-I, but significantly cheaper than the ISD-II, because it kind of suffers a little bit, and that you lose a little bit. Like, you lose some squadron power on the Kuat. Here you lose a little squadron power, but you lose a whole die in the front arc with the Cymoon. But you gain a couple of very, very interesting things as well. So these are meant to be kind of offshoots of what is a standard Imperial Star Destroyer. So the Cymoon has 2 black in its anti-squadron, so much less range, but much more reliable damage against squadrons that get too close. It's 3 command, 3 squadron, 3 engineering. It's an interesting squadron place for this, because while it can activate squadrons, you're not going to build this one to be a carrier usually, but it certainly can, considering it has some unique abilities, such as the fleet command option in its upgrade bar, which is very different and awesome, as a matter of fact. Well, it seemed kind of awesome, but we also got the Chimera title, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Now, among things that make this version unique, in addition to fleet command, is also that we have 2 turbo laser slots. While we don't have a ordnance or an ion cannon on this variant, we have 2 turbo lasers, and that allows for some really wicked combinations that are going to work extremely well with this particular version, because we have 5 red dice in the front arc, but only 2 blue. So while this ship is much, much better at long range than any other version, it is also weaker at every other range because of the fact, than most other versions, especially at close range, because it only has 7 dice in the front, whereas every other version has 8. And so that definitely, this one will still do very, very well at medium range as well. But once you get into close range, the other Star Destroyers are going to start to outperform a Cymoon. So this is one that wants to be at long range if possible, and hopefully kill you before closing the gap. Now, on its sides, it only has 1 red and 3 blue, and on its rear, it has 1 red and 2 blue. So this one is all about the front arc, and the side arcs are kind of just like, oh, if I happen to have it, and then that's fine, I guess. But this one really wants to put enemies in its front arc, and at long range, it has a pretty a pretty big grasp. And of course, with two turbo laser upgrades, you have a lot of ways to do that. I usually like to run this one with spinal armament and something else, and depending on what the build I'm going with, that gives me 6 red in the front. Then combine that with a concentrate fire for 7 red dice at long range, and usually I put some kind of dice rolling manipulation in there, and that's easy to do on a ship that already has fleet command built into it. Now let's look at our titles. This ship has a lot of titles. So I'm going to start with the top first. We'll go from left to right. The top section are the original 3 titles, and some of these have seen some changes, some have not. But we'll start with Relentless. At the top left, that is the cheapest title available for the ISD, and it's decent. It's not one of my favorite titles, but it says the total number of command dials that must be assigned to your ship during the command phase is reduced by 1. So what does that mean? That basically says you go from a 3 command to a 2 command. Kind of. You're technically still a 3 command ship. However, you happen to only have to assign 2 dials each turn. So it basically, if for anything else, any card or upgrade out there that references the command value of a ship, you're still a command 3 ship, which means you can still have 3 command tokens, but you only have to put 2 dials. You only have to set 2 dials. Well, this why would you want to do that? Well, this is great if you're a new player. Again, it takes some time getting used to trying to plan 3 turns ahead. Hey, what command am I going to need? You know, at the beginning of turn 3, what command am I going to need on the beginning of turn 4? It can be difficult to predict that far out when you're not sure if you're going to be in shooting range or not. You're not sure if you're going to need engineering. Am I going to get shot? Am I not going to get shot? Will I need to nav, or will I be in the perfect position? Will I be wishing that I had to concentrate fire? Will I have to pick up the slack? Will I have to be doing squadrons the whole time? Or are my squadrons going to be dead and I'll wish that I had something else planned? So all of those things are something that, like, especially newer players do struggle from, or if you're an experienced player but you're used to playing smaller fleets with medium and small ships, this one will be, running a Command 3 ship is a little different the first time you try it. So Relentless is there to help kind of bridge the gap and make it a little easier to fly this thing. I don't usually run Relentless because I usually run Command 3 or Command 2, 3, and higher ships, so I'm just used to planning in advance, or it's especially easy if you always just plan the same thing. If you just nav every turn, and again, the Imperial Star Destroyer definitely likes the navigation command because, well, it's got speed 3, it doesn't have any 2 yaws, and it really, it can always use nav. Nav is always a good option for this ship. Even though I personally love concentrate fire, nav is usually the best option to plan. So it's easier if you just always plan nav, and then I don't even need to take Relentless. I can save the points. Next up is Avenger. Now this one is a loaded title. It used to be one of the best titles in the game, and now it's one of the worst titles in the game, but it still has the occasional use. So here's the way it currently is, according to the latest errata, and of course the 1.5 upgrade card collection, and that's changed it a little bit. So Avenger is an exhaustible card that automatically recovers at the end of each round. It costs 5 points, and it says, while attacking, you may exhaust this card. If you do, the defender cannot spend more than 1 exhausted defense token during this attack. So exhausted, once their defense tokens are flipped over to orange, sometimes you'll still spend them to burn them and they'll be gone. However, in this case, it's been changed to still let them spend 1. So this really, Avenger was built to kind of combo with your boarding troopers, so you would kind of go over on, get to close range, reveal a squadron dial or spend a squadron token, flip your boarding troopers, flip over your opponent's defense tokens, and then pop Avenger and say, ha, you cannot spend any. It used to say that you couldn't spend any tokens, but they've changed it to where, you can still spend 1. And that's unfortunately the biggest problem, is because usually you're running Avenger on a black dice version of the Imperial Star Destroyer, and you're going to have a high damage count, and you really just need to stop the brace most of the time. And if they can spend 1 token, then it almost defeats the purpose of doing that whole combo. I say almost though, because the game has changed a little bit, and there are, evade is better now, can work at close range. Salvo is a thing now, so it's becoming more and more common for a ship to have like 4 different type of defense tokens that you're shooting, and they may be exhausted, and you may not want them burning everything. It's basically used on a ship that's almost dead anyway, and you want to ensure that it dies. And Avenger can sometimes help you, but I feel like it's probably it's been nerfed a little bit too hard, and I don't know if it may need to go down in points cost a little bit. I think if it was like 3 points, it probably would be at a better place. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if it ever gets a points adjustment. It's not the most worthwhile card here, because usually an accuracy is going to be way better, and then if you do get the accuracy for the brace, a lot of times you didn't really need the Avenger title anyway, and especially all of the setup and the complicated setup and the stars aligning for you to have that that close range, to have that person that that is kind of killable if you get the right shot, and but the only thing that would stop it is if they spent 2 exhausted defense tokens. It's very rare for that to happen. Let's move on a little bit to the most expensive Star Destroyer title, the Devastator. This one is a 10-point title, and this is a super fun title, but it's also super risky, and a lot of people don't run it, but it's really great for fun games. It says, once per round, while attacking from your front hull zone, again, that's where you always want to be attacking from, you may add 1 blue dice to your attack pool for each of your discarded defense tokens. So this one is very interesting, because as you get weaker and closer to death yourself, you become more powerful. It's kind of like a wolf backed into a corner. This is a title that combos extremely well with Darth Vader as a commander, because he allows you to spend defense tokens while attacking, and so you can you're more likely to be able to trigger this when you want to, because of Darth Vader Commander's ability. It also works well with other abilities that let you potentially get rid of defense tokens, although usually you don't want to get rid of defense tokens, but it's one of those, it turns the ship into sort of a glass cannon. As its defense tokens go away, it becomes more powerful, and that can be really fun, because it can allow for you to get potentially up to 4 extra dice once each turn, which is, there's no range restriction on here too. It just has to be from your front arc. It's tough to pull this ship off though, because a lot of times by the time that you've got enough defense tokens gone, that means you've been getting shot a lot, and it's probably later in the game. And usually later in the game is the best chance for opponents to manage to get out of your front arc by then. So it can be very tricky to make this one work, but it's so fun when it does. Now on the bottom we got some more, we got some later titles that came out much later after the initial Imperial Star Destroyer pack. The Chimera brought us some additional fun titles, and we're going to start off talking about the 7th Fleet Star Destroyer. This is not a unique title. This is one that can go on every Star Destroyer or any Star Destroyer. The only requirement is that it's Star Destroyer only. So, and it is also Imperial, so you can't put this on a Venator, for example. But this can go on a Gladiator, this can go on an Onager Star Destroyer, this can go on a Victory Star Destroyer, or an Imperial Star Destroyer. So this one is a shared title. It can go on anything that starts with that has Star Destroyer in it. It's a 5-point title, and it says, while defending against an attack that targets your front hull zone, before you suffer damage, you may choose and exhaust a copy of this card on another friendly ship at distance 1 to 4 to reduce the total damage by 1. And so basically, the more of these you have, the more you can kind of reduce incoming damage to your front hull zone. And so this is a good one to have on, if you have a flagship that's an ISD that's supported by other Star Destroyers, usually smaller Star Destroyers like Gladiators or Victories. It's a nice way to kind of just reduce incoming damage, as this can stack with other things. Also, this isn't a defense token, so it can't be stopped, and so that's kind of cool. So it's just it's a little bit of extra damage mitigation to kind of help you stay alive a little bit longer. Next up, we have the Chimera. The Chimera is a 4-point title that basically just gives you a fleet command. So you can't put it if you already had a fleet command, but it gives you a fleet command. And it also allows you to swap out the fleet command to a different one. The really cool thing about this is that you can potentially go over 400 points this way. So if you put a 5-point fleet command upgrade on your ship after it's got Chimera, now all of a sudden when you need it, you can swap that card out to a 6-point, and your list could be actually worth 401 points potentially, which is kind of interesting. But it really, the value is that it gives you the flexibility. It's like, you know what? I took damage on all of my ships. I need shields to maximum next turn. Boom, you can do that. You're like, all right, we're getting ready to shoot. I need intensify firepower. And then you can swap back, and so it gives you that flexibility. But one of the more important point is that it just allows for any ship to have a fleet command. Now, obviously, this is not going to work on a Cymoon because it already has fleet command, but this is a good title for anything that's not a Cymoon that you may want fleet command in your build. Of course, I'll point out that 1 point you save, well, it's not that great a savings because you spent 4 points on the Chimera title alone, which without a fleet command, it doesn't really do anything for you. And we have the Sovereign. This one was Tarkin's favorite ship. This is where he was initially on board, and this is it definitely pairs well with Tarkin. It says at the start of the ship phase, you may exhaust this card to discard 1 command token from up to 3 friendly ships at distance 1 through 5. If you do, each of those ships may gain a command token of any type. So basically what this one lets you do is it lets you just transform 3 other ships' tokens. Now, you could do this if you have a 3-ship build, you could do this and then 2 others. Or if you have a 4-ship build, I like the idea of maybe putting Tarkin on the Sovereign as your flagship, and potentially just saying, hey, well, the other 4 ships, now you guys get any token you want. So it turns Tarkin into, instead of just picking 1 token for everybody, everybody gets whatever they want. Not exactly, because it's at the start of the ship phase, so it is basically everybody gets whatever they want. Although they do have to be, within 1 to 5. So you can't spread them out too far, but as long as you're moderately close together, it gives you some great flexibility for your whole fleet. And that one's pretty fun. All right, so let's look at some builds. Now, I normally do like 4 builds, but since we've got like 6 titles, I just went ahead and did 6 builds, one for each title. So I'm going to start off with a Relentless build. For this one, I put it on a Kuat refit. Kuat being great because it has that defensive retrofit. And I figured, not only what is Relentless better for a new player, but maybe if you're going to go in close, right? We built the Kuat to be up close and personal. It's got ECM, so it can survive long enough to get up close and personal and survive the big shots that in case I end up not going first, hey, I can make sure that I can guarantee a brace. So that's going to be very important. But I decided to put assault proton torpedoes and ordnance experts on this ship, and of course this is going to give it the black dice critical effects and some black dice rerolls. That black dice reroll is also going to work on its squadron attacks. We have leading shots in there for even more rerolls if we really need to fish for that black die crit. Since we have 1 blue die everywhere, we can, of course, get rid of a blue die to reroll the black die again. And, of course, you don't have to use both of those. You could drop Ordnance Experts and just go with leading shots if you would like. So those are both good options on a Kuat. But the cool thing about Relentless being on here is you'll only have to assign 2 command dials, so it'll give you a better choice of when you need to nav and when you need to change it for concentrate fire, or for when you need to change it over to engineering. Now, this is probably not one that you're going to need to do squadrons on, so you have generally for a Kuat that's built like this, you're going to be running one of 3 commands. It's going to be mostly nav, and at a certain point you need to switch over to either engineering or concentrate fire, and so Relentless might help you make that decision a little bit easier. Next up we have an Avenger build. Now, it's kind of silly to run an Avenger build, but I thought, it's not completely dead. You can still make it work, and the ability to deny somebody most of their tokens is still a good thing. So I decided I'd go with an Ozzel build. I want to go fast, and I want to be on top of somebody. And this is you definitely want to be first player for a build like this. And so I decided we'd go with Ozzel so I could get closer. I could start at speed 3. We'd probably plan nav a couple of times, or I'd probably do a squadron command first, followed by a couple of navs, because we'll need that squadron token to trigger boarding troopers. And boarding troopers is going to be, again, on the ISD-1 I went with, because it's going to reference our squadron value. We want to be able to hit all 4 of our opponent's defense tokens, although this will have a harder time doing this for, for a Super Star Destroyer or a Starhawk or anybody with more than 4, or somebody, a 4 defense token ship that has a gate on it. But but generally for most ships, it'll still do some damage. Well, we have hardened bulkheads on here. If we go too fast, we might end up getting rammed or ramming a little bit. Leading shots is going to work really good here, since I had to use my weapons team for boarding troopers. And then we put spinal armament in the front. Not only is this going to help that front shot, it's also going to help the rear shot, because if you're going in that close, there's very likely to be some ships in your rear arc. Somebody overshoots you, so it's a possibility, but it's there, and it's one of those, that's adding dice that's not going to prevent me from also firing out of the side arc. But we really want that front shot to be the big one, because Avenger is only going to work for 1 shot, because it's an exhaust. So there we go. We'll still get a decent shot, but they're probably still going to be able to brace it. But what they won't be able to do is they won't be able to brace and redirect. They won't be able to brace and evade. They won't be able to brace and salvo, or all of those things, right? They'll only be able to do 1. And so there's still some value in that, but your ISD-1 it might not live that long after doing that. So maybe hardened bulkheads will help out with that. For a Devastator build, I decided to put it on a Cymoon, which is one of my favorite ships. This one would work better in a Vader build. Now, whether or not, I probably wouldn't have Vader on this ship, right? I would probably have Vader somewhere else, because this ship is probably going to die. But I did put Captain Nita on here. He's going to allow me to change over one of my tokens to an evade. So I can swap maybe one of the redirects to an evade, or maybe the contain to an evade, and then we can spend that evade when attacking for turbolaser reroute circuits. And we have spinal armament making use of both of our turbolaser upgrades to add a die and to also give us dice mitigation. If we have the concentrate fire command, now we can attack twice at long range. We're looking at 6 red out the front with spinal armament. And if if I do get shot a little bit, I can have the opportunity to spend some defense tokens. We can potentially, especially with Vader as our commander, we've got all the rerolls we need through Vader as commander, right? Well, a good reroll with Vader as commander. We've got turbolaser reroute circuits to mitigate, even a blank die after that. So we have, and the cool thing is, you can roll your dice. Maybe you've been shot once already, you evaded. I can roll my dice. I'm like, oh, okay, let me spend Nita to now my evade is gone, or not spend Nita, but exhaust turbolator reroute circuits. Spend that evade. It's now gone. Now I can add the Devastator's blue die, or better yet, I could do Vader first and spend another exhausted defense token to reroll stuff that's already in the pile, thus increasing my Devastator counter to maybe 2 now. And now I trigger Devastator and roll 2 blue dice into the pile. So there's a couple of different ways that you can work out your timing and to maximize the number of dice you roll. But keep in mind that if you do spend like a Vader reroll, a Commander Darth Vader reroll, you're not going to be able to re-roll the dice that you add after you trigger Devastator. So, as long as you're okay with, not being able to re-roll the blue dice, granted, blue dice have no blanks anyway, so you're always probably better off adding blue dice after the fact, especially if you need accuracies. And usually you do want accuracies, especially at long ranges. You're not always that likely to get them on the red dice. So, again, it can be fun. You can potentially roll 11 dice at long range if you have a concentrate fire. I mean, you can do more than that. I think you can do 13 if you have opening salvo as your objective. So you can really get some wicked dice at long range with Cymoon and Spinal and Devastator and Vader. Crazy stuff. The ship's gonna die though, because then it has no defense tokens. Once you make it like as good as it can be, then it's like a glass cannon. It's ready to be shattered, but it's gonna go out like a blaze. It's really fun to run, that's for sure. It's probably not gonna win too many tournaments like this, but it'll at least win you some cheers and hoots and hollers from people in the store. Like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that many dice in one roll before. It can do that. It's fun. We did a different Cymoon with the Sovereign for Tarkin here. So yeah, we got the Devastator and Sovereign there. So Tarkin with the Sovereign, I think this is just great, right? It's his ship, and putting him on board, it does a couple of different things for us. Now, this is like a Cymoon that I'm more likely to kind of want to run. I have Krennic as my officer, giving me the red dice rerolls. Again, I don't always run Commander Vader, especially when you can run Officer Vader somewhere else in your fleet. And I usually like to do that. But Spinal Armament, here I put XI-7s because that's a really good secondary turbo laser upgrade. It's going to give me 6 red out the front, and then stopping, pretty much shutting down your opponent's redirect, which is excellent. I did put Gunnery Team on here again. I want to make 2 shots, and I've got Intensify Firepower. Now, this is going to work fleet-wide, but it's also going to be really good for this ship. And then I've got Krennic on here, which is going to give me all the black die, or the red die rerolls that I want, because I'll probably be doing Concentrate Fire a pretty good amount on this ship. And the cool thing is, Tarkin here is going to do something awesome here, because while I know this ship wants Concentrate Fire tokens, every other ship may not want Concentrate Fire tokens, because those are just a reroll for them. And especially if I've got Intensify Firepower in my build already, they probably don't need the Concentrate Fire token. They probably need engineering tokens, or squadron tokens, or navigation tokens, or something else. And the cool thing about Sovereign in this particular case is it allows me to have Tarkin say, Concentrate Fire. Boom, everybody gets a Concentrate Fire token. I get one to fuel next round's Intensify Firepower. Or this round's, as a matter of fact, because this also happens at the start of the ship phase. And I can choose the order. But the good thing here is that I can now choose a different token for everybody else, because as soon as they get one, they can just trade it in for one of their choice because of Sovereign. Now, this only won't work as if I have like 5 ships, but if I'm running an ISD, it's probably not a 5-ship build. All right, so yeah, so this is pretty cool. It gives everybody a token of their choice effectively, and I like that, and it allows me to continue to support the fleet with Intensify Firepower. I think it's a really solid Cymoon build. Expensive though, but solid. We have an ISD-II build here with the 7th Fleet Gunner. This is a fun one because what this does is it takes advantage of the beautiful new upgrades that we've gotten from all of the Clone Wars stuff. And I think that this is a really fun thing. And of course, we're missing one more, which I'm going to throw up in here in just a moment. It's another ISD-II build, but we have another. I guess maybe it's sort of like a problem. I don't know if it's really a problem or not, but one of the issues that we've got is that while the ISD is great, we don't have a whole lot of salvo, and salvo is so prominent in all of the Clone Wars stuff, but the ISD doesn't have it. And while shouldn't it be like the most advanced fleet or the advanced ship in most of the fleets that we have out here? Shouldn't it be? And I feel like it should be, but for whatever reason it just never kind of showed up, right? So what can we do about that? Well, there's a lot of new things that have come out lately that allow us to have salvo, and I think that's a super fun thing. So what we've done here is we've kind of, instead of making this ISD-II is like normally a really good type of ship to basically just be your flagship. This is one that's just using a little bit of everything, and that's a little scary sometimes, right? You don't necessarily want it to have everything. You want it to have some things, but not necessarily everything. But here we're gonna have the ability to have 2 salvos, and I think that is totally awesome. So what we're looking at is, where did it go? There it goes. All right. So local fire control is going to allow us to swap out one of ours for salvo. Reactive gunnery is going to let us spend anything we want for a salvo. So that much is cool. But we also have Riva Demesne. Is it Demence? I always want to say Demence, but I think it's actually Demensne. So, but what Riva is going to do here is she's going to allow us to ready our salvo again after we're attacked, and I think that's a really cool thing. It's, if anything, it's going to probably discourage people from basically attacking you too many times. But I think that's a really cool way to make sure that we can salvo quite a bit. And we have flak guns, which is going to increase our range for our rear dice. So we can roll those blue dice at long range when salvoing. So we're basically going to get 3 dice back at somebody every time they attack us, which is really cool. And, I think this is, depending, unless it's obstructed, but then you could always run Ramadi or something like that if you didn't want that to happen. And then DB-827 is going to make sure we can turn one of those dice into a crit. So that's just fantastic. And a lot of these are all new upgrades. Flak guns is new. DB-827 is new. Reactive gunnery is fairly new. Local fire control is fairly new. Point defense ion cannons is another new one. That is really cool also because that gives us a little bit of squadron defense built in. You force a reroll every time somebody's at close range, which is amazing. And so why did I choose 7th Fleet for this particular build? Well, I thought to myself, if I'm trying to max out and just see how much of the new stuff I can take advantage of on this ISD-II, which has kind of transformed a long way, and if I'm not going to run a traditional defensive retrofit that's going to help keep my ship alive, I'm going to need all the damage reduction I can get. So I thought this might be an opportunity for 7th Fleet Star Destroyer. Again, you point your front at them, take your regular shots, and then when they shoot back, you get to reduce that damage by 1, depending on how many 7th Fleet Star Destroyers you have in your fleet. And then you also get to fire back at them. And if they shoot you again, boom, I guess what? I get to ready that salvo again. And then so if they shoot you enough times, again, you want this ship out in front, you'll have some damage reduction. And if they're really close, then you'll be able to also force them to reroll dice with the point defense ion cannons. Now, granted, this is probably a little bit too much on the salvo. Like, we're really going all in on salvo here, so you won't necessarily need all of these things. I think realistically, I could probably drop reactive gunnery or local fire control for something a little bit more traditional, but it's still pretty cool. And then we have maybe a little bit more of a traditional ISD-II build, more of a flagship build here. And this is kind of one that you're probably more likely to see. We have the Chimera on board this one, since this is maybe the best ISD-II out there. I decided to, I put one of the entrapment formation on here. Again, it's a 5-point upgrade, but then of course we can always swap it out for a 6-point upgrade whenever we need that. So we might as well make it as the initial entry point as cheap as possible. We put gunnery team on here because, of course, we want to threaten multiple ships in our front arc. We put ECM, electronic countermeasures, because it is the best defensive retrofit. It's going to guarantee us that brace and, again, help make sure that our ISD does not die, and that's a very, very good thing. We also have the H9 turbo lasers. This one is now a modification. It didn't used to be a modification, but it's a great way to guarantee yourself an accuracy. Virtually guarantee an accuracy. You could roll all blanks, but that's unlikely. It really helps when you've got gunnery teams going and, I need to also take out that bomber command center you have over there. Well, no problem. I can get rid of the scatter, It's really great for that. And then, of course, heavy ion emplacements, which we have a pretty good blue dice complement here. So heavy ion emplacements is going to help really wear down ships and help you try to eventually one-shot a ship, or maybe just two-shot a ship. But you got a lot of blue dice, might as well take advantage of heavy ion emplacements. So this one's a little bit more well-rounded. It's not all offense. It's a good mixture of offense, defense, and a little bit of support. And I think that's probably a good way to run an ISD-II. All right, guys, that is my breakdown of the Imperial Star Destroyer. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I will, I'd love to keep the discussion going, and I'd love to hear some of your favorite Imperial Star Destroyer builds. And also, you can keep the discussion going over in Discord, where the discussion kind of never ends. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are amazing and help make this all possible. This was a long one. There was a lot of Star Destroyer talking points to get through. Thank you so much, and may the Force be with you.